Speaking of Senator Ted Cruz,
Thanks.
the only Republican besides Donald Trump who won a state last night is piling on the political firepower, and now we have Jeb Bush possibly deciding who to support. The breaking news is that Jeb Bush will be meeting with the Kasich, the Cruz, and the Rubio campaigns, so you know some type of endorsement will be next. But Cruz getting Idaho last night. So now he trails GOP frontrunner Donald Trump, as I mentioned, by 99 delegates in the battle for that nomination. What must he do to close the gap in this Tuesday's major nomination contests? Let us bring in former Virginia Attorney General and Cruz supporter Ken Cuccinelli on Senator Cruz's path forward. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
So does that path require convincing Marco Rubio and John Kasich to pull to the side of the road and drop out of the race?
You know, that's really up to those two. You've heard Ted Cruz speak, though, to their supporters and say what your reporters are saying. There is only one competitor who can beat both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and that's the guy with the proven conservative record who's taken on the establishment in Washington. And we heard Carly Fiorina join that train today, and she is one of the most articulate and forceful makers of that announcement, of pounding that message. So we're really glad to see her get on board today, and Ted Cruz is really the only option for those folks.
You know how you know that he might be that person that Carly Fiorina says he is, the one to possibly beat Donald Trump? When you hear Donald Trump talk about it, he seems to have a very good sense that Ted Cruz is the one to battle at the moment. And in fact, he hit him very hard at that news conference last night, which some people thought was terrific and others thought was kind of low rent, you know, constantly liar, Ted, liar, and all of that.
But not a single issue. Not a single issue. So
to these issues, a lot of our viewers, we've got a business viewer audience. Every single one of the tax plans of all the Republicans and the Democrats add to the deficit, and they are a lot of tax-friendly ideas that seem to then simply balloon the deficit. What's he going to do about that?
Well, for starters, Ted has put more proposals for cutting spending on the table than any other candidate. And you have to do that when you're spending more than you're taking in.
Yeah,
and that's a hard thing to do. That's right. And that's a hard thing to do politically. Nobody wants to identify, I'm going to cut here, I'm going to cut there. And Donald Trump hasn't done that. Ted Cruz has done that. I happened to see Steve Moore yesterday. And Steve, who has been on your network frequently, of course, said Ted Cruz has the best tax plan. And Steve is all about what gives us the most economic growth. And Ted Cruz hits that nail on the head. And I will say that Ted himself has said, when talking about that tax plan, look, the exact number isn't the most critical thing. It's the structure and wiping out all the tax benefits for all the special interests.
And, you know, you could go all the way back to Iowa.
Which gets to your deficit point.
You could go all the way back to Iowa, where he was unafraid to say, why are we giving ethanol breaks when it might, you know, that's like the government picking winners. And he still won Iowa, which was interesting. I'd like to get to the accusations, though, of the dirty tricks. You know, this is now 2 times that it's dogged this campaign, and he's had to come out. That can't be a good thing. And he had to let go of Rick Tyler, of course, who had retweeted. So, you know, listen, it's all rather puerile at certain points, but this has got to stop. Do you agree?
Well, certainly, one way it did stop is the way it was handled last time around, and that was, as you mentioned, with Rick Tyler, who left the campaign. But, you know, the most recent one, as I understand it, was volunteers in Hawaii. And, I mean, I've run for governor, I've run for attorney general, I've run statewide, never for president. But, you know, how many times do we say, God save us from our friends? I mean, people get over-enthusiastic and they do other things. But, look, none of this has an effect. This particular one doesn't have an effect, didn't have an effect. And in fact, Hawaii was the only state where Marco Rubio got a single delegate. He got 2 delegates in Hawaii, and that was it. So it didn't have an effect there. And it does distract, as you listen to Donald Trump's attacks, it distracts from the issues that really affect people's lives, that affect economic growth, which is what Ted is trying to talk about right now.
Well, you're a busy guy. You just got nominated to the Virginia State Supreme Court. That's certainly a big development as we watch that. I don't know if you've heard, but there's an empty seat at the Supreme Court.
I am aware of that, and as of this afternoon, I withdrew from that participation. Yes.
You have withdrawn
but it was
from
an
that.
honor. It was an honor to be considered.
Okay, well, that's interesting. That's breaking news. So you've withdrawn from that, but from a judge's perspective, you know, should that seat be filled sooner rather than later?
Yes, and it will be. They've broken the impasse down in Richmond, and for our impasse on our Supreme Court, and then the U.S. Supreme Court, you've got a situation where you've got this long tradition of Democrats cutting off consideration, including Joe Biden, of nominees in final years of terms. I actually think this is a great opportunity on the U.S. Supreme Court for the American people to weigh in. You're not just going to elect a president, you're going to elect a justice. And each candidate who is the final nominee of their party is going to have to lay out in a fair bit of detail what the American people are going to get on the Supreme Court with them as president. And I think that gives us more opportunity for accountability on the court. And nobody has ever been more prepared in that regard than Ted Cruz, who clerked on the Supreme Court, argued before the Supreme Court, has authored 80 briefs before the Supreme Court. No one is as prepared as he is to get that right.
Well, he's got a friend in you. Will you join us again on the show? Thank you.
I'd be glad to.
Thank you.